Folks, we're waiting for Diane Menashe to sign on, and as soon as she's able to sign on, I'll begin. Menashe is walking into the media room now. Apparently, we're having some technical difficulties. There might be too many people, I don't know. But I guess the format that we're going to use is that basically I'll start with a brief statement, and afterwards, if we can have an orderly, if you have questions, we'll open it up at that point. And if we can do it in an orderly way, I'll try my best to get through this with the technical issues that we may run into. I see Diane has just gotten on. Diane, lower your screen a little. There you go.
Am I coming on as Dan Perlman?
That you are.
That's my next life.
All right. So everyone, thank you for joining. I want to start off by saying, by thanking everyone on our team. My team, Jaime Lapidus, Allison Rapetti. Behind the scenes, of course, there was Dorothy Clay Sims and Dr. Oregon Hunter, and we also had some interns and other people help out, and they were a tremendous asset to helping us try this monster of a case. And when I say that, I don't say it lightly, but the one person I really do want to thank the absolute most would be my wonderful, lovely, and kick-ass co-counsel, who, for those of you in Columbus, don't realize how you have such an incredible gem of a trial lawyer who defines everything that a trial lawyer should be. And I am so honored and lucky to have had her by my side. And I can tell you, it wasn't always pretty. We bumped heads a lot, but I love her more for it. And I cannot thank you enough, Diane, for the amazing work you have done. And as everyone saw, it was a team effort, but Diane is certainly a shining star in that town, and Columbus, Ohio is very, very lucky to have her. I also want to reach out to and thank our adversaries on the other side of the aisle, the prosecutors in this case. They fought incredibly hard. They're all very good people. And I will say this, we just see the world differently. And we saw things incredibly differently in this case. And I think numerous times things got really heated, and for that reason, I think you saw a lot of headbutting with both sides. But as it relates to William, I can tell you he's incredibly happy, grateful. He wants this time right now to spend with his family. They're incredibly relieved that this nightmare is finally over. And we couldn't be more happy for him and his family, a lovely, really wonderful group of people. He is an incredible doctor, and it's unfortunate that this happened to him, but we're glad for this verdict. I think this was the only verdict that justice could have given. And I think that this verdict speaks to not only William, but all of those doctors and nurses out there who are attempting their best to give comfort care in a very difficult situation. And they don't need to be looking over their shoulders, wondering if they're ever going to get charged with a crime. And I hope this speaks volumes to those folks that are decision makers and have the discretion to try and bring people into the criminal justice system. This was a scary trial for me, and for all of us involved, because we knew what was at stake, and that was the future of comfort care and the future of many healthcare professionals who put their lives at risk for us daily. And over the last 2 years, if there's anything that we've seen, it's that. And they're truly heroes, and they don't deserve a prosecutor telling them what they can and cannot do at bedside, and especially when they don't have any medical training whatsoever. I said this from the first day I took this case, and from the first day I met the media on this case, and that was that this case doesn't belong in this courtroom. At best, it would have been a civil case, but the reality is William Husel was an innocent man, always has been and always will be. And thank God for the jury and their verdict today. And we could not be happier for William and his family, and what message this actually sends to all of the healthcare professionals and prospective patients in the future. I certainly know that all of us will be there one day, and I'm glad that if I ever find myself in that situation, that there's nothing like this restricting a doctor from providing comfort care. And throughout this process, it's been extremely difficult to bite our tongue, as you all know. Prior to trial, we're able to speak to the media. During the trial, while we had no gag order and we were free to speak to the media, we chose not to, because we were focused on the task at hand. And there were lots of times where we wanted to speak and voice our opinions of what was going on in the courtroom, but unfortunately we couldn't, because that's just not the right way to try a case. Having said that, I am deeply angered at some of the things that have been said about William in the past, and I hope that people such as Chief Thomas Quinlan, who said that this was a breach of a doctor's oath and it was vile. I find his breach of the oath of a law enforcement officer was vile, based on the pathetic investigation that his department actually had in this case. And as it relates to the decisions made by the prosecution to charge William, I think it was a bad decision. And I think once the new prosecutor took over, I think that just compounded a bad decision. And you can't allow the spotlight to shine away your focus on being ministers of justice. And I'm deeply saddened that William had to go through this. And you know, I could sit here and just be happy about it, but I'm concerned about those who are to come, by allowing popular movements, or just because there's a battle against fentanyl in the streets doesn't mean that we have to take it to the hospitals. And for that reason, I highly criticize the decisions made in that regard. But this is a moment, really one of relief as opposed to victory, because of the prospective dangers that this case could have brought to healthcare professionals and to future patients. And based on that, if I'll go ahead and pass it to Diane if she has any comments. If not, then we'll open it up for questions.
Hi, this is Steve Brown from WOSU. It sounds like Dr. Husel will not be here today. Do you know when he would be speaking to the media next, if he will be?
Well, you know, I immediately spoke to him after the verdict, and he just wanted some time to be able to spend with his family and kind of let himself decompress so he can gather himself together. And then I will be discussing with him the time and place for when he's finally willing and able to make a statement.
Is he still indeed a licensed doctor, and does he have any near-term or long-term plans to practice medicine again?
he certainly does hope to one day practice medicine again. I can tell you that. And we on the team, I know will do everything we can. There are other lawyers that have been involved on the civil end of William's defense. And those lawyers have worked diligently. They helped us get through step one, which was this case. There are other cases pending, and certainly we plan on addressing and attacking each and every one of those cases, and hopefully getting great results with those as well, because I think the science is clear, and I think the evidence is clear that William Husel was a great doctor and hopefully can be again someday. I will tell you this, that as it relates to William not being able to practice medicine, I think they lost a great doctor at a very critical time. Columbus lost a great doctor at a very critical time when this pandemic hit, that could have saved more lives and been much more helpful. And it wasn't just William, it was all of the nurses and other healthcare professionals that were fired from Mount Carmel just before the pandemic hit. And all of those people were hardworking, honest, honorable people who were just doing the best they could for their patients. And I think this prosecution harmed more lives than it could have ever helped.
One other question, then I'll yield. The prosecution called 53 witnesses. You called just one. Was that because of your extreme confidence in this case, or what was the strategy behind that?
Well, there were numerous reasons behind that. I can tell you one of them, and the main reason was just because, they could have called 100 witnesses. It wasn't going to change the facts. It wasn't going to change the evidence. And I think you all saw vigorous cross-examinations from the defense on each and every witness. And many of those witnesses were defense witnesses. And the prosecution had no choice but to call them because, and I will say, if not, I would say about 90% of the witnesses called by the prosecution were all incredibly favorable to the defense. And we would have considered calling them in our case in chief. But in this country, you don't have a burden of proof. And for that reason, you don't have to call any specific witnesses, and no one should have to speak in their defense in this case, in this country, because of the way our system is set up. And fortunately, it's the best system known to man. And for that reason, we only called one witness. We didn't need to. We really didn't need to. And for that reason, that should speak volumes to William Husel's innocence. Next question.
Yes, this is Maria Durant with ABC6 WSYX. Quick question, have you had a chance to talk with the jury yet? And do you see maybe one big thing that might have tipped things in your favor?
We did. Ms. Menashe spoke with the jury. Usually those conversations are kept between the jury and the lawyer, unless they specifically asked her to comment on their behalf, or if she's willing to disclose that, I'm sure she'll chime in. But generally speaking, those are things that are kept in private, as all juries want to keep their anonymity private, and their privacy. It's paramount to them. I can tell you what I think the big turning point was, and that was the very first day, opening statements where we believe we laid out the case and all of its complexities. The state read a 30-minute opening statement, which really didn't address the case or the issues. It was just a broad stroke out there saying he's guilty of murder and this is the crime scene, and didn't even address really the patients or the hospital or any of the witnesses that the jury would be hearing from. So I think we set the tone from the very beginning. It was what we wanted to do. And the first witness, Detective Gillette, everyone got to see exactly how this case was started and where it went, and which was extremely unimpressive. Next question.
Mr. Baez, this is Bethany Bruner with the Columbus Dispatch. You said prior to this case in an interview that you believed it was a cause, not just a case. And you spoke a little bit about that, but can you talk to us about why you took this case? I'm sure you get requests to take cases all around the country. What drew you to this particular case and coming to Ohio?
Well, it's crazy, but I've spent a significant amount of time this year in Ohio. Prior to this case, I was in Cleveland for 3 months trying a federal Medicaid fraud case, and Ohio has seemed to embrace me deeply. Having said that, I will tell you this, and I took this case. It was really interesting the way it all came about. William called me very early on, and unfortunately I was tied up. I only take a certain amount of cases, and I was tied up on other matters, specifically the Harvey Weinstein matter. And as soon as William saw that I was withdrawing from the Weinstein matter, he immediately called me again and flew down to New York, where I was trying another case. And we had a frank and honest conversation with his wife, Mariah. And after looking at the evidence and what they were accusing him of, I saw the potential danger of a conviction in this case, and what it would mean to healthcare and what it would mean to patients. There are a lot of people in pain all across the country, and this war on pain that has been initiated by various governmental agencies needs to really step back and be cautious as to what they do. People are trying to just ease their suffering. They're not trying to cause anyone harm. And doctors who have no motive, no reason to want to harm someone, shouldn't be looked at in a negative light because they decide to be aggressive with pain, because sometimes pain can be incredibly aggressive to human beings. And that is why I took this case. I took this case because it meant a lot to me, and I'll be frank with everyone. It affected me unlike any other case I've ever had. William was such an inspiration to all of us, and his family was incredibly just a wonderful group of people who were very worried for William, and the incredible amount of support that he had from the nurses shouldn't be overlooked either. These are people who should have been angry at William for losing their jobs and in some cases careers, but instead they stood up for what was right. They stood up against the government, which is not an easy thing to do, and they stood against the drumbeat for a conviction in this case, which was not an easy thing to do. But for their bravery, we would not be here today with a not guilty verdict, and that's because they chose to speak the truth as opposed to fall in line with the witch hunt, which was basically what this case was. Next question.
I've got a second question here. You also filed an affidavit for disqualification for the judge in this case prior to the jury beginning deliberations. Can you speak as to why you filed that, and particularly why at that moment in the trial?
Sure. First of all, I will say it's now unsealed, and unless I get a pulling me back text otherwise, I will say this much. I have never tried a case that it was extremely hard to put on a defense, and a lot of what was not seen in the background were the struggles that we had putting forward our case, which included all of the issues with Project Lighthouse, our experts, as well as the patient TY, which was the benchmark. If you want to call this patient anything, you could call her patient zero, which really set the trend. And it was the experience that William Husel had that changed and affected his dosing habits. And as you learn through the trial, that's how doctors learn. They didn't learn because William had this great training at Mount Carmel. You heard that he was hired fresh out of school and was placed there by himself in the nighttime ICU, and basically all he had was his sound training and his experience to go on. And I will tell you this: it was sound experience. TY suffered a very bad death, and we were prepared to introduce her and present her before the jury and all of the experiences that affected William and his dosing habits, so that the jury could understand that. But the state was not having it. They had no interest in the jury knowing the complete story. They were selective as to what they wanted the jury to hear in terms of his statements. This is the first case I've ever seen where someone's confronted and the jury will never hear what exactly he said when being confronted, because they knew it was not beneficial to their case. None of the nurses were ever asked what he told the families. And one of the critical things that we thought was, even though we were able to get it in with a couple of witnesses, that he in fact advised them of the potential side effects of these drugs, so that they can make a full and informed decision based on all of that. I mean, I think this is critical information for juries to have when they have someone's life in their hands. And how that could be justice is beyond me. I'm incredibly disappointed that this jury didn't have the complete picture, but hopefully we showed them enough, and so that we could so that they could understand the facts a little bit better. As it relates to the timing, the motion to recuse Judge Holbrook has now been, it was sealed until the verdict. And now that we have the verdict, it's unsealed so you can all read it. But basically there were a number of things that were going on, and we had various issues with the court, and we tried our best to resolve them. And whenever you're in trial and there is and you feel that you might not be getting a fair trial, this decision to move to recuse the judge is not one you can take lightly, because one, you have to have a basis for it. Two, it has to be strong enough to be able to win. The last thing you want to do is lose a motion like that, because in fear of any type of retribution. I'm not saying that Judge Holbrook would have done that or did do that, but it's a legitimate fear that a lawyer has when filing a motion like this. And when we actually filed this motion, it was based on how shall I say this? Evidence that we thought was overwhelming, and the standard is that the accused does not feel that he or she could get a fair trial. And when you see the motion, you will see what was actually said on the record that basically took us to the tipping point that this is not something that we could stand by and idly do. And if anyone knows me or the way we try cases, we fight hard for our clients, and if all we ask for is a fair shake in trial, and if we're not going to get that, we're going to certainly fight for that. And that's exactly what we did and why we did it at that time. Next question.
Mr. Baez, I'm sorry if you addressed this. I hope you did, and I missed it. The length of the jury deliberations became a story itself on Monday when they told the judge they were at an impasse, and then he read them the charge to continue deliberating. What were your thoughts when that happened? And looking back now at this point, does that seem like it worked out well for you because you ended up getting a full acquittal instead of a potentially like a mistrial like there was in another high-profile local murder trial recently?
Well, Stephen, to be honest with you, we were surprised it was taking this long because at the end of the day, our understanding was they were deadlocked 11-1 on 13 of the counts and 10-2 on the remaining count or the remaining patient. We believed, of course, that those numbers were in our favor. So, and we believe that for several reasons, but the very first and obvious reason should be that the prosecution did not present any evidence, zero, in terms of William Husel's motive or intent, I should say. I know they don't have to prove motive, but they didn't prove intent. They didn't put on any evidence of his intent. I think they tried their best to bring a witness in to talk about odd numbers and microwaves and bromances, and that was the best that they could do. And that was, and I think that was, if you were in the courtroom, it was laughed at. And I certainly hope that no one ever has to stand trial for murder based on such flimsy evidence in the future. But as it relates to the jury deliberations becoming a story, we were concerned because, of course, anything can happen. But we fully expected this to be a quick verdict for that reason. If you read the instructions and the elements, it's clear they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt intent. And when you don't offer any evidence of it, it's ridiculous. They attempted through their experts to talk about his intent, but a doctor from Florida is not going to be able to tell you what's in a doctor's head in Ohio 2 years later. It's just absurd. And the fact that he included information that wasn't relevant to intent didn't make it any better. So, and of course they had big problems with causation too. So, I hope I answered the question there. Next question. I must say I've never heard such a quiet group of reporters in my life.
Jose, this is Bennett Haberly with WBNS in Columbus. I asked Diane the similar question I'll ask you. Was there something singular that you thought tipped the balance in your favor, or was it a number of things?
If I were to say singular, I would say it was an innocent man. And if it were multiple, just look at my closing argument. I could have gone on for days, to be honest with you. And I could have gone on for days during my opening statement, just showing one piece of evidence after another, after another. The hardest part about trying this case was the records were so voluminous because these were such sick people that whenever the state tried to introduce evidence that we thought would have been somewhat misleading or that made William look as if he was doing something wrong when he really wasn't, we had to go at the moment and find something in the records find what was in the records that completely contradicted that. And we did that multiple times to the best of our ability. But trying a case, defending a case is a very hard thing to do because it's not a scripted event, and you have to be able to respond quickly. And that's why I thank my team at the beginning of this presser, because it's not a one person victory. It's not a two-person victory. This was a team effort with names and faces that you've never heard of and never saw. But there were a lot of people working hard just to try and stand up to the government. And that's an incredible, hard and scary thing to do. Just because a prosecutor and a police chief get out there and hold a press conference and say this doctor's a serial killer or something like that doesn't make it so. And it's unfortunate. We live in a society that finds interest in punishment, but justice does not mean to punish. Justice means fairness, and we tried our best, and it wasn't always easy because of the obstacles we faced. But there were multiple reasons, and I'll tell you this, Bennett, and I'm not singling you out or your series on this case, but it's a good example of if you have media agencies, PR agencies, professionals, crisis management folks, beating the drum for a couple of years, that is a hard thing to defend in the courtroom. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to do, but fortunately they still have to answer to the truth. And the truth was William Husel is an innocent man, and he was wrongly charged, and thank goodness that justice prevailed. Many times it was an incredibly difficult and challenging case to present.
Yeah, the only follow-up I would have would just be, I asked Diane the same thing, and you guys still feel like this is a case that belongs in civil court, not in criminal court, correct?
At best, it's civil court. On its best day in civil court. When you don't have a policy and you don't have guidelines, how are you going to say someone's wrong? You want to leave it up to a doctor's discretion based on the clinical picture of the patient. You have to allow this doctor to utilize their training and experience to treat these patients. What are you doing taking medicine out of the hands of a doctor at bedside and handing it to a prosecutor in the courtroom? I think it's foolish and it's outrageous. And for that reason, I don't have a hesitation to speak strongly about it and point the finger at those who screwed up in this matter and put these patients' families through a second round of mourning and this whole process. I feel terrible for all of the patients' families to having had suffered again, but hopefully they'll take solace in knowing that their loved ones' last moments were ones in peace, and that they didn't have to suffer bad deaths as a result of a doctor being afraid to make them comfortable. Next question.
Jose, Dan Perlman with NBC4. I apologize if this question has been asked already. I was in the hallway talking with Diane and just stepped back a couple of minutes ago. At what point throughout this trial, if there was a point, did you believe that this might turn in Dr. Husel's favor? Was there a single moment? Were there several throughout the last 9 weeks or so where you started to believe not guilty would be read on all 14 counts?
Well, I don't know. Well, I can tell you this, Dan. You've covered the case throughout the pretrial process, and I don't think you ever saw us shake or in fear of the evidence in this case, or what we believed was going to be presented. In fact, I think you heard me say, and I think you could see in the courtroom, we were anxious for William's day in court. And if there was ever a turning point, I can't say there was. It was the day I took the case that I knew that this was an innocent man. And as I read through the evidence every day, while reading and the months and months of preparation that went into trying this case, the years of preparation, I should say, we knew that there was never a fact that we knew there were facts that might have on the surface looked bad, but we also knew that there were other factors and things that could explain it. And for that reason, we always felt confident, never overconfident, and never underestimating our adversaries who put up an incredible fight, and it was a difficult thing to do based on the nature of the case. Remember, not everyone wants to hear these, not everyone wants to talk about these topics. That was a challenge. The overwhelming presumption of guilt in the community was a major challenge. The knowing that the patients' families felt the way they did based on the calls and conversations they had prior to being questioned was a challenge. And you know, we knew those things were going to be before us, but the reality is the truth. We were hopeful and confident that the truth was going to prevail, and that would be. I wish I could give you guys a turning point, but it really wasn't. There were some moments in the courtroom that were incredibly impactful, and I think my co-counsel's cross-examination of the state's so-called experts was devastating to the state's case. I think the questioning of the lead detective in this case set the tone for the trial that this was a farce of an investigation to begin with. And then I also think that that there were, as the administrators of the hospitals were questioned, that you got to see some of the rationale and the process of how this case unfolded. And I think all of that spoke volumes. Having said all of that, we always knew and we were aware of some of these things. But I cannot tell you how scary it is and should be for everyone to know that if a doctor can get charged like this, anyone can. And we have to really do our best to try and just wait for a person to have their day in court. Next question. Everyone has what they need and they're ready to go back and write their stories, huh? All right, well, I'll see. Diane, do you have anything you'd want to add?
What a moment. And I said this when I was walking into this press conference. What a moment for William, and as you said, Jose, for patient care, right? And for our country with respect to healthcare. And it's just, you know, and I hope William starts to begin the rest of his life. Every minute that passes today, I wish that for him, and I'm just so happy for him. And I can't emphasize enough what you also said, Jose. This was an incredible team effort. Jaime and Allison, and obviously you and me, and Dorothy, and everyone behind the scenes. You know who you are, even though you're not named. And it was a incredible team to be a part of. And let's do it again.
I know she doesn't mean that, everyone, but I know it comes from a place of love, and I said this to for those of you who don't know, for the non-trial lawyers out there, when you try a case with someone like this, you either don't speak to them ever again, or you become family forever. And just so you all know, I know Diane would echo it, that we're family forever, and we just you know, you grow to really love someone based on facing adversity like we did together. And I cannot tell you how lucky, incredibly lucky I am and the Columbus community is to have a rock star trial lawyer like Diane Menashe. And I learned so much from her. And I'm very lucky to have gotten this case. And I want to thank William and Mariah Husel for entrusting their lives to us and giving us their trust. And it meant the world to all of us, and we never took it lightly. So thank you, everyone. And if we don't have any further questions, I'm more than happy to end this thing and to finally loosen my tie. Anyone else going once, twice? All right, thank you all for attending, and please, I hope you report this the way it should be done, and that is a victory for healthcare and for future patients of Comfort Care, and a fine, amazing doctor, Dr. William Husel. Thank you.